Right, everyone. I don't know if it's good morning, good afternoon, or good night. I understand everyone comes from different time zones. So wanted to say hello to everyone. Can everyone hear me? Everyone, please put your palms together. Homage to our fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to our fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. Homage to our fundamental teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha. All right. Good. Hello, everyone. What I understand is we are going to learn about the Brahma Net Sutra Bodhisattva precepts as an introduction. So the monastery has given the opportunities to take the 42 hands and the Bodhisattva precepts. So we're introducing the Brahma Net Bodhisattva precepts here. So let's take some time today to look at the Brahma Net Sutra Bodhisattva precepts at certain chapters and certain texts. So the focus today is not just only on the precepts, because I'm sure the Gold Buddha Monastery monks and nuns, they have assigned this to many other Dharma masters to help teach this as well. So the Brahma Net Sutra Bodhisattva precepts, the complete text comprised of 61 chapters and 120 rules. And this is accorded by the Dharma master Shenzhou in the preface of the Brahma Net Sutra. During the Tang Dynasty, the Dharma master from Shenzhou went to India to take the two sutras. And on the way, he was on the boat and he was bringing the sutras back to China. But the boat was sinking. And so the Shenzhou Dharma master was wondering what to do. So what he did was he threw everything else off the boat. He threw everything off the boat, but the boat was still going down. So finally, he had kept the sutra in the beginning. He didn't want to throw them out, but he saw the boat kept falling down. So he had to take out the Net Brahma Sutra, the Brahma Net Sutra. And when he took it out, the boat stopped sinking. So he realized maybe China didn't have the blessings and the conditions to understand the Brahma Net Sutras. So the Brahma Net Sutra was not able to arrive in China. So the Brahma of Net Sutra, the whole chapters, all of the chapters, the whole text, has never been traveled to China. Out of the 120 rules, 61 chapters, only the one chapter has gotten to China. And it is only the chapter 10 that has been able to be sent. And this, the name is 10 Mind Ground of Bodhisattvas, but that's not the full title. The full title is the Precepts of Bodhisattvas Mind Ground taught by Nishanda Buddha. And this is the only chapter the Dharma master Shenzhou did not want to throw out. He couldn't bring himself to it, so he was able to bring it to China. And this came in 2 volumes. So out of the 61 chapters, this is the only chapter that was brought to China. So this, he passed it down to his disciples and they were able to translate it to Chinese. So although it has 2 volumes, most of the people only look at the second volume. So even when we recite the precepts, we only recite the second sutra. I'm guessing the temple of Gold Buddha Monastery, we will probably talk mostly about the second volume as well. So because the first volume was not traveled as discussed as much, we don't know as much about it. And furthermore, the other chapters that were not brought over, we don't know what they were about. However, we can see that with the volume that we have studied, the second volume, we can see that we learn a little bit about the other chapters of the Brahma Net Sutra Bodhisattva precepts. So now I will give an example of the text to show how we may get a hint of what the other chapters may be talking about. Even though we can't see the entire sutra, we can guess a bit from the examples from the text. So it's difficult to show all of the sutra as we have only limited time and also limited screen. So I've selected the most important parts to discuss. All right, please give me one moment. Okay, so first, let's see the first example. The first example comes from the preface. So because of the time limit, I won't read it with everyone. So if you can read English or Mandarin, you can read it through quickly. This is as concise as I can get it. So the main point, let's take a look at the name, the end. It talks about the worthy kalpa chapter. So we can know that there is a world kalpa chapter, worthy kalpa chapter in the sutra. And on the second example, after the subconclusion of the 10 major precepts, you see there's a little conclusion, and it talks about the 80,000 rules of conduct chapter. The third example, we can see that when it talks about the 10 minor precepts, it also talks about a little conclusion, the summary. You will see that it also gives an example. Here it's talking about the 6 chapters. The reason they say it's the 6 chapters, they have labeled it as also like the 6 paramitas in a way. So from the research we have found, the 6 chapters, they may not mean one chapter. They may actually mean 6 chapters. So in the beginning, we may think maybe it's about the 6 paramitas, and that's one chapter. But actually, from other sutra texts, we can understand it might mean that there are following 6 chapters, not just one. Now, the fourth example is after the 20th minor precept, you can see after there is another summary after the 11th to 20th minor precept. This one gives another example of a glimpse of other chapters in the sutra. And from here, you can see the chapter mentions is on expiating offenses chapter. And on the 5th example, after the 30th minor precept, it gives another example so that we can see that says it is the prohibitions chapter. The sixth example is the 39th precept after, where it gives a little summary, a conclusion, and this one shows the chapter on the Brahma and the chapter. Finally, for the 48th minor precept, the seventh example, it gives the example, the celestial king who goes beyond appearances. And the last example we show, it also shows again in the sub-conclusion of the 848 minor precept, and it gives the 7 practices of the Buddha Light of Royal Flowers chapter. So why am I giving you all these examples? It's showing because this means there's many other chapters that we can get a glimpse about what they're about. Even though we only know the chapter 10, we are able to see, oh, these are the other chapters in this sutra. And sometimes people may be confused why, when they read this, why do we have all these different chapters? And so this is the explanation that we weren't able to bring them over to China. These chapters exist in its original text. So now let's go back and understand a bit more about the chapter on the Bodhisattva mind ground, the 10th chapter. So before the examples, they all appear in the chapter on the Bodhisattva mind ground. In reality, there's actually a lot more chapters that this chapter mentions. However, we don't have enough time, so we won't expand on that. So in volume 1, we will learn it's spoken by Nishanda Buddha, Dharma teacher, in volume 1. And you can see this is what they discuss. So Nishanda Buddha is the speaker in volume 1. And the second volume, it's spoken by Shakyamuni Buddha. So in the first volume, it's about the 3 worthy stages, the 10 abodes, 10 practices, 10 dedications. There's another name for the 3 worthy stages. It may also be called the 30 mindfulness. So other than the 3 worthy stages, the Nishanda Buddha also talked about the 10 sagely stage, the 10 grounds. So here, I'm not sure if you're able to connect it with the Attamsaka Sutra, but actually the Brahma Net Sutra is actually connected with the Attamsaka Sutra. The timeline actually connects. And so it can be very similar, certain names that in the contents. Now, what's the reason? We know that the Attamsaka Sutra was spoken by the Buddha to the Bodhisattvas to learn how to be Bodhisattvas and how to find their Bodhi way. So the Brahma Net Sutra talks about the Bodhisattva precepts. So they're very connected intimately. So the first volume, the Nishanda Buddha, focuses on 3 worthy stages, 10 sagely stages, how the Bodhisattva cultivates. Now the volume 2, Shakyamuni Buddha speaks about the 10 Dharma doors. So later I will briefly look at the 10 Dharma doors. The last Dharma door is about the 10 major and 48 minor precepts. So volume 2, when we recite it, it's the volume, Shakyamuni Buddha, when we recite it, we're speaking only of what Shakyamuni has spoken for the 10th chapter, not all of the chapters before. So Volley 2 is when Shakyamuni Buddha speaks about the Lotus Days Treasury world after the Lotus Days Treasury world. When he returns from it and teaches at 10 places after realizing Buddhahood, and only after that, the Buddha goes to teach this Dharma beneath the Bodhi tree in Jambudvipa in the Saha world. Now, why do we talk about this? This is to mainly let everyone to get a better understanding before studying the Brahma Net Sutra. Because when we look at the sutra, you'll see all these names coming out. And you might be very confused at where did all this come from? So we're explaining this a bit more. So the reason is because we don't have the full sutra text, so we don't have chapter 10. So this is why we're explaining this first. So in the beginning, we explained the sutra title. The title is chapter 10, The Precepts of Bodhisattva's Mind Ground, taught by Nishyanda Buddha. So we're going to take some time to explain the title. So let's take a look at the word Brahma Net. So you can see this very short sutra text. At that time, the Buddha beheld all the nets and canopies hung in the palace of the kings of the great Brahma heaven, and said to the assembly, "The limitless worlds are like the holes within the net. As each and every world is different, their varieties and infinite. So too are the Buddha's teachings methods." So this is after the three worthy stages. The Buddha is speaking to all about light. Why do we use the light to spread the Dharma door? So the reason is Nishyanda Buddha, they want to portray that it is a Dharma door of the mindfulness. So that's why it uses the light of mindfulness as to spread the Dharma. So they're not using the language, rather than they use a visual light to speak to the Shakyamuni Buddha. So what does Nishyanda Buddha speaks to Shakyamuni Buddha? Says to this Dharma door that I'm spreading right now, the 10 major precepts and the 48 minor precepts, please spread that to the tens of thousands of Shakyamuni Buddha disciples, to spread the word to all living beings, tens of thousands of living beings, so that they can cultivate and learn about it. So when Shakyamuni Buddha leaves the world of the Lotus Days Treasury world, that's when Shakyamuni Buddha, before it goes to the Bodhi tree under Jambudvipa, he first goes to 10 places before to spread the word. So these are the 10 locations the Shakyamuni Buddha goes to teach the 10 Dharma doors. So the first one is the Palace of All-Pervading Radiance, Hall of Wonderful Light, taught the 10 world seas. So in the second place is from Yamkisa Heaven Palace. He speaks of the 10 dwellings. Suyama Heaven is the 10 conducts. Kashida Heaven is the 10 transferences. Bliss from Transformation Heaven Palace is 10 dhyana samadhis. 6 comfort from others' transformation, 10 is 10 grounds. 7 is first dhyana Heaven Palace, 10 Rajas stages. And second dhyana Heaven Palace is 10 patience. Third dhyana Heaven Palace is 10 vows. And lastly, the palace of the heavenly king is the mind ground Dharma door. And that's what we're focusing on here today. So when he spoke in the Dharma door, the king Maharshvara became and donated to the Dharma master, to Shakyamuni Buddha, his most treasured possession. So when the Shakyamuni Buddha came to spread the Dharma, the king Maheshvara donated his most precious possession. And the Shakyamuni Buddha saw his possession, and he he used it as an example. So what the king donated was this net. This net had many holes in it, and between the different holes of the net, the Shakyamuni Buddha used that as an example to show that the many tens of the Dharma doors, they can explain that each world is different and each world exists without being conflicted with one another. That's like the net of the king Mahershvara. They are not conflicted, and they all exist individually. So in the sutra, it also talks about precepts of mind ground. What does this mean? So earlier we explained that volume 1 is spoken by Mishyanda Buddha, the second volume is spoken by Shakyamuni Buddha. So in volume 1, it describes Rashana Yanda Buddha. It describes it as he's glowing in the lotus, having bright light shone. Now here we're learning the second volume. It was about the Bodhisattva precepts, and you can understand that there are many different types of Buddhist precepts. There's the Bodhisattva precepts, there's the Dharma master precepts, as well as the sound hearer precepts. And the sound hearer precepts are very different from the Bodhisattva precepts. Usually when the Buddha did not create this precept. They would only create a precept when someone breaks a precept. However, the Bodhisattva precepts is different. They were spread from the Buddha to all the different Buddhas after. So every Buddha has always been committed to the Bodhisattva precepts. And that's why this, when we take the Bodhisattva precepts, it doesn't just stay with us for this life. It follows us with the lives after. However, after we take it in this life, once we pass this life, it is let go from us, from this life. So all the Buddhas in the past have studied the Bodhisattva precepts, and this has been the original source of all Buddhisms. And all the original sources of Bodhisattvas and the seed of the Buddha nature, it has always come from the Bodhisattva precepts. So in the sutra, it shows the Bodhisattva precepts. They are the Vajra brilliant jeweled precepts, and they are the original source of all Buddhas, the original source of all Bodhisattvas, and the seed of the Buddha nature. So ultimately, the Bodhisattva precepts does not come externally. It comes from our inherent nature, but it's been hidden by our afflictions. We can see that the Bodhisattva precepts is another name for our inherent nature. So when we take the precepts, when we learn the precepts, when we follow the precepts, we are just wiping away the afflictions and letting our inherent nature come out, our Buddha nature come out. So next, let's take a look at the grave offenses. So it's also about the prajita, which is translated as grave offenses. The Bodhisattva precepts mentions the 10 grave offenses. Let's take a look at this first. Prajita is translated from Sanskrit as grave offenses, grave violations of the moral code, beheading transgressions, extreme crimes, or offenses that lead to expulsion from the Sangha. So this is when our afflictions come up and we cannot get rid of them. So humans commit grave offenses. It's not by accident. It's because of all our afflictions that causes us to commit these grave offenses. We have this process of slowly committing these grave offenses. So usually you don't go straight into committing this grave offense unless you are afflicted by your afflictions or confused by your afflictions. So as said earlier, parajita can also be translated as beheading transgressions. This also shows kind of that once you're beheaded, once your head is gone, you can no longer become what you were before. So people who break these offenses, then it's very difficult for you to find your way to on the Buddha way. So even though the Buddha and Bodhisattva, they're very kind and they take in are compassionate and take in a lot, but like the ocean, they don't accept everything. For example, they don't take dead bodies in the ocean. Generally, when dead bodies float in the ocean, ultimately they find land to rest on. So this is kind of what Buddhists and Bodhisattvas are like. They are compassionate and accept all, but once you commit a grave offense, this cannot be forgiven. So this reminds me of a story of someone who used to be a people trafficker. So they would kidnap people and then put them into very small, confined areas. And then one night, the gas leaked. So in the morning, no one was awake. They all died in the gas leak. So the person was a person trafficker. So they were worried to be caught. So he threw all the dead corpses into the ocean, trying to hide the evidence. So the next day, the police came to find him. Why? So all the dead bodies from the sea, they were all thrown back onto the shore. And this reminded me, this example I gave it reminded me of the story. So now on the screen, you can see the 10 precepts. As we don't have as much time, you can see everything on the screen. You can read it very quickly yourself. So next we are going to speak of the minor precepts of defiling offense. So there are 48 minor precepts. Why is it called minor? What's the difference from the major precepts? They are named as minor because they're less serious. So anyone who violates the minor precepts, they committed a defiling offenses as they tarnish their impeccable conduct. So in different sutras, they have different names for the defiling offenses. So in the Sutra on the Good Precepts of Bodhisattvas and Sutra on Bodhisattva stages, it's named minor misdeeds or dushkrata. In Discourse on the Stages of Yogacara Practice, it's named as evil deeds, practices that violate the principle, also called vicious. In Sutra on Wholesome Rebirth, offense is due to negligence. So in these different sutras, they name these offenses as differently. So often when people who take the Bodhisattva precepts, their afflictions may cause them to be stronger than their resolve to take the Bodhisattva precepts. And so this may cause them to break the minor precepts. So what's the reasons for establishing these minor precepts? There's 6 reasons. One is to protect those in the world from contempt and ridicule. So the reason is that people would, when they hear that you've broken these minor precepts, then they would shun on Buddhism and may see Buddhism in a bad view. And so the Buddha, and in this case, they would create a bad karma. So this is why the Buddha established these minor precepts. Secondly, is to praise the Bodhisattva's world transcending path. So Bodhisattvas cultivate a world transcending path. However, living beings are in the world. So the Bodhisattvas come to the world to show the appearance of the world transcending path. Third is to put an end to the slightest emotional attachment, as small as the size of a particle of dust. So Bodhisattva precepts, it asks highly of the people who take it. It goes to the very slightest emotional attachment. It's not only when you do these things that you break the precept, it's even when you think the things. So any thought that comes in your mind, any small tiny thought, that also is a break to the minor precept. So even the smallest, slightest thought, then that would count as breaking a minor precept. So the reason why we have minor precepts is also to make sure that when you realize you may have broken a minor precept, you stop yourself from further committing a grave offense. So fourth is to watch over the 3 karma of body, mouth, and mind as an antidote to the 3 poisons. Fifth is to indirectly observe the 10 major precepts. So as mentioned earlier, usually people don't commit the grave offenses immediately. There's always a process where it starts from the small affliction, small thought, and slowly grows into the major offense. And so to avoid and to observe the 10 major precepts, we first have the 48 minor principles to slowly remind you to make sure that you don't break the 10 major precepts. 6 is to foster 3 categories of bodhisattva precepts. And this can also be called the 3 categories of pure precepts. And you can see on the screen what the three are. And the three are the full set of precepts, practicing all virtuous deeds, and granting mercy to all sentient beings. So if we look at the first one, the full set of precepts, what it means all precepts. The 5 precepts, the 8 precepts, the 10 precepts, these are all included in the name of the precepts. Second is practicing all virtuous deeds, whatever that works for goodness. So all goodness is considered as a precept. So lastly is the granting mercy to all living beings. So it means whatever works for the welfare or salvation of living beings, these are all considered as part of the precepts. So these are the 3 categories of pure precepts. Now, I want to share a small story with everyone, an anecdote of everyone. So I see that we only have a bit of time left. So the story happened in 1980s in the summer. The Dharma DRBU invited the Dharma Master Hui Shen to go to US to speak of the 10 major precepts and the 48 minor precepts. When I heard the Brahma Master Hua's disciple mention it, as soon as they finished the morning recitation, the Brahma Master Hua took them to San Francisco to listen to Dharma Master Hui Sun to listen to the 10 major precepts and 48 minor precepts. Brahma Master Hua would sit in the back and would check if anyone was sleeping. If someone was sleeping, he would hit his disciple's head to make them wake up. Now, this story was shared with me by an old disciple of Brahma Master Hua. This old disciple likes to draw. So she likes to draw the back of their head. So here's a picture that she drew the back of their head. So it was Brahma Master Hua watching everyone to make sure no one was sleeping. Now this disciple sat behind the Brahma Master Hua and drew the back of his head. And you can see on Brahma Master's head, we are not sure if it's a flower or what is it. Now this is the first drawing. Now the second drawing, let me show the second drawing. So this is probably from Brahma Master's perspective of watching the disciples. So there are disciples who are left-hand people. There are also disciples who are lay people who went. So this was in the very beginning, in the past, in the 1980s, when he would take them from 5 a.m. after morning recitation to go to Gold Mountain Monastery to listen to Dharma Master Huinan, to listen the precepts. And the whole time, Brahma Master Hua would kneel and listen to it respectfully. Now, we can all take a different perspective on understanding why he knelt like that. First of all, it's because the Brahma Net Sutra was very difficult to pass through, leave India, and to be able to be spread to China. So, and we were only able to get one chapter, not even the whole 61 chapters of it. So another reason may be that Dharma Master Hua was really respectful to Dharma Master Hui Shen and very respectful that he was willing to spread the Dharma about the precepts. But either way, the Dharma Master Hua gave was a role model to the disciples, showing how respectful he was when listening to the Dharma. And often, sometimes I even feel guilty in a way because often when we don't have enough time, I don't always stay for the Dharma lecture. Sometimes I am preparing class while listening to the lecture because I don't have enough time. However, Dharma Master Hua has mentioned before that when we listen to the lecture, we should listen wholeheartedly, and we might even take notes. If we're listening to lecture while doing something else, especially things that are not as good, then this karma is inconceivable. Anything we do, we will lose the opportunity or lose any good karma we have done. So today, as I prepared for this lecture, I remembered what Brahma Master Hua has mentioned before. And I hope that I can remind myself to get rid of this bad habit of preparing lessons while listening to lecture. Now, so today, our lecture, the lecture on the Brahma Net Sutra, the introduction of this, we will end here today. Now, good Buddha monasteries, Dharma masters, they have asked me to share this with everyone. So, starting in 2024, next year, we will be starting class again. And for the third year, the first term, we will be discussing the Avatamsaka Sutra and the Wisdom Opening Surangama Sutra. If interested, please register online. So the website is already in the chat message. That's the link you can click on to register. Please use this link to register. And that's all we have for today. So let's now put our palms together for dedication of merit.
愿以此功德，庄严佛净土，上报四重恩，下济三途苦。听见闻者，心发菩提心，尽此一报身，唐山极乐国，顶地老和尚。好的，我们今天呢就到这里结束。好，大家阿弥陀佛。